Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to mismapasion, YouTube's premium channel about all things women's football, and welcome to the inaugural edition of Champions Corner. This is of course going to be the series where I look at every single Champions League match day and I highlight some of the biggest performances that we've seen by the big teams and of course the Davids amongst the Goliaths of European football, and just highlight some of the key performances that were standing out in that particular match day, and just basically just run down some of the biggest games and the biggest goals and the biggest thrills and spills that are going to be confined within any season of the Women's Champions League, starting of course with this season's edition of the Women's Champions League in 23-24. Of course, at the time of recording, we have just wrapped up on match day 1 of the Women's Champions League, where we had a lot of goals and a lot of thrills when it came to all the matches that were on display for the most part here. And without any further ado, let's get cracking right into it as we start with some of the big matches that were on display in the last 48 hours. And we start off with Bayern Munich versus Roma. Now, of course, this match was pretty much an immovable object meeting an unstoppable force here, where they were the two unbeaten heavyweights in their respective leagues. Of course, Bayern are unbeaten in the Bundesliga, so are Roma in the Serie A Femminile, and this was a highly intense and frenetic encounter between these two teams. That was pretty much everything you'd expect from them, and they were a very evenly matched side here, but when it came to looking at the eye test, it was Bayern who exerted a greater amount of control throughout the match, which showed in the goals that they scored. Of course, the second goal came from an own goal, but just looking at overall dominance in both the first half and the second half, it was Bayern's show here. And Roma, they did the usual Roma thing where when they got a chance at the ball, they would do their best to go and attack the opposition. But in this match particularly, I think they just toned down their level of aggression that especially we're used to seeing in Serie A, because I think they gave a huge serving of respect to Bayern Munich. And I mean, of course, who wouldn't? You don't want to be get caught off the back foot against a team like Bayern Munich, so it makes sense. But this did allow Bayern to exert their control over the game, as you can see in the match itself, which is currently available on a full replay on DAZN's Women's Football YouTube channel. So I would definitely recommend that you go watch that match if you'd like to, as well as all the other matches that have transpired in the Women's Champions League. Just as a little bit of a disclaimer here, since I'm already on this tangent, DAZN, they will be showing the entirety of the group stages of the Women's Champions League. Then going forward, when we go into the knockouts, I'm not so sure, but I'd like to think that they will also be showing that on their YouTube channel for free, I hope, at least for the knockouts. But the group stages are completely free, so of course, if you'd like to keep up with all the action that happens here in the Women's Champions League, then of course just go on to the DAZN Women's Football YouTube channel and just enjoy it. No, this is not a plug, it's just me just making sure that you know where to get your fix for Women's Champions League. But anyway, going back into this match here, again, it was very entertaining between these two teams. Roma were essentially the team on the back foot throughout the entirety of the game, but thank God they had the captain's contribution of Giuliano, who came in clutch literally in the dying embers of the game to draw Roma level 2-2 with Bayern Munich and secure a vital point in the group of death here. This match was just awesome to watch, and I think it was definitely a good standard bearer and a standard setter for what we can pretty much expect from the Women's Champions League this season, especially from teams like Bayern Munich and Roma. And speaking of the group of death, this didn't take very long for us to witness our first giant slay here as Ajax took on Paris Saint-Germain, Ajax being the host, and of course they ran out the 2-0 winners over PSG. PSG, looking at this game, they were the better team on paper, and again when you look at the statistics now also, they were the better team. They had the lion's share of possession, of shots on target, etc. They pretty much had everything swaying in their favor, but unfortunately they were really toothless when it came to attacking the goal, and for Ajax they were far more clinical. The first goal that came for Ajax was just a beauty of a shot that came in from Hoekstra, and of course in the dying embers of the first half, Ajax would be awarded a penalty that Sheridan Spitzer, the captain of Ajax, would dispatch to eventually give the Dutch outfit the 2-0 win over Paris Saint-Germain. And this was another fun game to watch. I think this was a very good display of the holistic and pragmatic approach that Ajax is going to most likely take in their group, because of course it features the likes of PSG, Bayern Munich and Roma, so it is very good of them to take this approach where it's pretty much safety first, But then when you see an opportunity, you seize it and you do your best to be as clinical as possible in front of goal, which I think it will definitely do very well to serve Ajax going forward in the knockouts here in the Women's Champions League. And as for PSG, despite them having the lion's share of everything, like I mentioned earlier, it was just unfortunate for them because they're just toothless up front and their defensive solidity was a little bit questionable at times throughout the game. But I think this is just one of those things where you shake off this awful performance and you pretty much just look back on it, learn from it, and do better in the upcoming matches here in the Women's Champions League, because they looked lost at sea. They were a hapless outfit, especially going up against Ajax, who pretty much did everything that they were supposed to do in order to give themselves the 3 points, which is what they did. And to everybody's surprise, Ajax currently sit top of the group of death, and long may it continue. We all love a good underdog story. Of course, Ajax in general, given their standing in Dutch football and European football, they have always been considered an underdog team because they play in an inferior league when it comes to comparing it to the other opposition that they face on a continental level. So hopefully they can be a feel-good underdog story for this season. I would like for them personally just make the semi-finals. So here's to hoping, fingers crossed. We move from the initial proverbial David versus Goliath encounter in Amsterdam to a Goliath versus Goliath encounter here as Real Madrid took on Chelsea. And this was pretty much a very good encounter between two good teams, but of the two, Chelsea was just the better side. And it's unfortunate that when the final whistle went, Chelsea had to share the points with Real Madrid because they were the better team. We take everything that we said about the Ajax and PSG game and just flip a few things over, because Chelsea, they had the lion's share of possession, shots, and everything else in between, but they were unfortunate to have been, if we're being honest here, cheated out of the 3 points here. Me personally, I'm not a Chelsea supporter in general. I don't like Chelsea as an institution, but I'm not gonna let my dislike or anything get in the way of impartiality and being fair in just general footballing life, because in this game, as Chelsea were the more dominant side, despite Real Madrid initially going ahead through a wonder strike, which is just awesome to see from Olga Carmona. There were two particular incidences where Chelsea were unfortunately cheated out of the win, in my opinion here. The first came when Chelsea were 2 goals up against Real Madrid, and Atenea del Castillo, I hope I pronounced that correctly, the first name particularly, was brought down by Fleming. And initially it seemed like she was brought down in the box because that's when she had fallen down, and the referee gave it as a penalty, which Carmona dispatched to give herself a brace. But looking at still images and replays, it just doesn't look like it was a foul that happened inside the box, and it's really led to calls for VAR to now be introduced at the very least in the UEFA competitions, which would make sense in my opinion. But again, just hindsight is 2020, of course. In the moment when I was watching the game personally, I thought it was a right call for a penalty, but then looking over it again and again, I was like, I don't think so. I would expect the linesman, or the lineswoman in this case, to just pipe up and say, no, it's not a penalty, it's supposed to be a free kick. But Lord only knows what they were looking at, what they were watching, what game they were watching. But it's all said and done, and it's unfortunate for Chelsea to have suffered that kind of a situation. And the second infraction that unfortunately befell Chelsea was at the end of the game, where what was pretty much a very clear-cut and open goal by Nima Charles was flagged for offside, even though she had made a run from an onside position and the ball was crossed towards her while she was still onside. It was just weird, because again, just going back to what I said earlier, Chelsea were the better team. They deserved to win. They had completely dominated Real Madrid off the pitch. And Real Madrid, they're lucky. They essentially got away with murder. Of course, you can say it's due to officiating ineptitude or incompetence, whatever, but they're lucky to escape with a point in this match. They will definitely be just sighing with relief that they've managed to pull this one off. For Chelsea, it's unfortunate because they had 2 opportunities where, 1, they were caused to draw level with Real Madrid, and 2, they were, again, cheated out of a winning goal, and it's unfortunate because Chelsea did very well in this game. I know I'm just repeating it at this point, but that's just the fact of the matter here. If Chelsea had been a little bit more vicious in attack and with their finishing, I do believe personally that they would have run out 5-2 winners, if not even more. And Real Madrid, they will have to be going out of their way to thank the likes of Misa Rodriguez, who was one of the instrumental players in that Madrid team that was keeping them in the game throughout its entirety. But that's just the first controversial game of course, the season's Women's Champions League. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the situation. What do you think should have been done to just arrest the situation? In your opinion, particularly with Del Castillo's penalty call that was given by the referee, what do you think? Do you think it's a penalty, or you think that it's one of those 50-50 kind of calls? I don't know. Maybe the PGMO was running this game, but that's besides the point. But overall, it was a highly entertaining and engaging encounter here, especially after Real Madrid had gone ahead early again through the efforts of Olga Carmona, because that's when the game really ramped up. So definitely one of the highlights of match day 1 for the Women's Champions League. The final match to highlight from match day number 1 in the Women's Champions League comes from Paris, France, with Paris FC, the giant slayers of the Women's Champions League qualifying stages, where of course they knocked out both Arsenal and Wolfsburg. Wolfsburg, of course, who are former Champions League winners themselves, took on AS Hacken. I think I'll just say FC Hacken so that I don't make any mistakes here. But anyway, that's besides the point. Paris FC took on Hacken in what was another very fun encounter here. Now, going into this game, many people had tipped Paris FC based on their body of work from this season in particular to just essentially cruise to a well-fought victory here. And it makes sense given what I've just said, calling them giant slayers and looking at their league form in the D1 Arkema, that they are essentially the favorites going into this match. But Hacken had different ideas on the day, as they were actually the team that ran out winners here. And they were 2-0 winners off the back of some very well-worked team goals and some very great defensive assurity and solidity for themselves. And this was a very fun match to watch, because not only was it pretty much another underdog story when it comes to Hacken, especially in comparison to Paris FC, but I think it also gave insight to at least the other teams in the group, how you can go about beating Paris FC, because they're one of the favorites in their group to advance here. And for Hacken, the way they played was similar to how Ajax played, in that they took a safety first approach where they made sure that they were solid at the back, and when they had a very good opportunity to go forward, they would take it, and when they had their opportunities to shoot at goal, they would make sure that they were clinical, decisive, and just overall good attempts, which is what they did as they ran out 2-0 winners, of course, here. And I think when it comes to Paris FC, it's not a situation where they were very poor or they were just outplayed by Hacken. It was just a situation where they were just beleaguered because they were just not in the game, in the sense that they just couldn't figure out their opponent. And their opponent themselves, they were very good in their approach of just saying, we're gonna do our best to keep Paris outside of our goal, and when they do come inside of our goal, everyone is going to be on song. When you need to mark a man, you're gonna mark your man, etc. That's just how well organized Hacken were throughout the entire 90 minutes here. And a special mention must go to the goalkeeper of Hacken, Falk, who was just imperious between the sticks. She pretty much did what Shamaka Nadozi, the goalkeeper for Paris FC, did at the World Cup, but on an entirely different and elevated level here. Anything that came her way, she would either pick it up and make sure that she held it, or she would parry it out to make sure that there would be no counter attempts by Paris FC to snatch a goal on the rebounds. And that was just great to see all out, especially from Hacken. And I guess with Paris FC, you could just say that they couldn't hack it in the Women's Champions League. I know, very bad joke, but it just had to be said and it just had to be made. But ultimately, this was another fun game to watch. But for Paris FC, it's definitely not a time to worry. Just like PSG, they just need to look back on this match, learn from it, and then come back stronger in their next match day in the Women's Champions League. Match day one of the Women's Champions League was nothing short of a glorious spectacle of the quality of women's football that is on display on a continental level in just Europe alone here. And just something that will exemplify the level of quality and I guess the dearth of quality in certain leagues in Europe, just go and watch the games of Olympic Lyonnais versus Slavia Prague and Barcelona versus Benfica. I'm not really going to touch on those two games for long because when you look at the score lines, I don't have to say anything else. But when it comes to the Lyon game, it was pretty much women against girls. I've said it in so many previous videos that Lyon are a quality side that just can't be stopped. They are teeming with quality, not only from the starting 11 but the squad overall. Just to exemplify just how strong they were, Melchi Dumornay did not feature in the matchday squad at all. Right now, it's not known why. Hopefully it's not due to injury, but something else, could be clerical issues, but that's besides the point. But looking at the scoreline, which was 9-0 to Olympic Lyonnais, that was just literally just a FIFA level of a scoreline. They pretty much scored every type of goal you'd expect, with the only thing missing from them was a shot from outside the box and an acrobatic effort. And speaking of acrobatic efforts, that's exactly what could be found in the Barcelona versus Benfica game. Now, I watched the entirety of the Barcelona and Benfica game, and looking at the two teams, I was hoping for a little bit more of a dogfight, especially from Benfica, of which I will admit I did get some of that in the first half, but pretty much from the second half onwards, it was a wrap. First of all, just like to say congratulations to Alexia Putellas, who on the back of having such a stellar last few months with just winning the World Cup and becoming the all-time leading goal scorer for Barcelona, she is now officially the all-time leading goal scorer for Barcelona, but this time in the Women's Champions League, which she of course scored in this game particularly. She scored 1 goal, and the other 4 goals for Barcelona, yes, they won 5-0. They came from Esme Brooks, a brace from current Ballon d'Or winner Aitana Bonmati, and speaking again of an acrobatic type shot, Asisat Oshwala, who just 40 seconds into coming in the game, she scored a bicycle kick to wrap up the game for Barcelona here. And again, I'm not spending too much time on these two matches. Like, you can just go watch the highlights here and you will realize what I'm saying. These two teams are just unstoppable. It's going to take a mighty effort from whoever they face in the remainder of the Women's Champions League to eliminate them. Personally, I am picking these two to make it to the final and just give us another belter of a final that we had 2 years ago. But anything can happen. It's football. Football is a crazy game. Barcelona could slip up or get too excited and get eliminated by a Roma or Bayern Munich, even a Hacken. We've seen that anything is possible here in the Women's Champions League and just football in general. But those two matches, they're just really fun matches to watch if you're supporting the right team, I guess, or if you're a neutral, just loves good quality football. You're guaranteed both of those things in these two particular matches that feature Lyon and Barcelona. But it's a good start by both of these teams. They are heavyweights of the highest pedigree in the Women's Champions League. They of course are the 2 most recent winners of the Champions League. Barcelona of course winning last season, and the season before Lyonnais winning it. And yeah, it's crazy. It's just crazy to see what these two teams are capable of doing. Their squad depth is unreal. Just Barcelona, for example, I've already touched on Olympique Lyonnais, but Barcelona, they had the likes of Putellas and Bonmati starting the game, and late into the second half, they introduced Parajuelo and Oshwala, and I don't know, it's not cheating, but that just goes to show you the levels that the other teams in the Women's Champions League are facing this season when it comes to Olympique Lyonnais and Barcelona. So that's just one thing you should just keep in mind. This is pretty much their league, and it's going to take some mighty efforts from these other teams to try and stop them from reclaiming their crowns. And just to wrap up this video, just to look at the other results that happened on match day 1 of the Women's Champions League, we had Eintracht Frankfurt recording a routine win over Rosengard, and St. Pölten and SK Brann fighting in a very entertaining match, which was not shy of the entertainment factor from both teams, with SK Brand coming out 2-1 winners over St. Paulton here. Shout outs to the player from St. Paulton who scored a worldie of a goal. I forgot her name and I'm so sorry for that, but she scored a very fantastic goal. It was well taken. It had such nice elevation and dip. It was just aesthetically pleasing. But that will do it for today's video. This is of course the first edition of Champions Corner. What did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What things did I not touch on that you would like me to touch on in the next version of Champions Corner? This was of course a very fun inaugural match day for the season's Women's Champions League. My final thoughts on it are that it's just great to see these teams coming up against each other. Looking at all of these matches, I was most excited by far with the Bayern Munich and Roma game, because I waxed so much lyrical about Roma and their attacking prowess this season, but I was really eager to see how they would stack up against a team that would really test their might, which other teams in Serie A at the moment have failed to do, and it was good to see that encounter between Bayern Munich and Roma. And for the other teams that are featuring in the Women's Champions League, it's only going to ramp up from here, and I expect it to be a spectacle going forward. And if it's not anything short of that, then it will be a huge disappointment. But I believe in all of the teams in this year's edition that they're going to make it a spectacle, and they're going to make it the best edition of the Women's Champions League yet. But what did you think of these matches? Leave your comments in the comment section, of course, and please also make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.